So in this episode, we're going to be talking about major injuries that happened in the earlier slates of week 1 that could impact your fantasy football team, as well as 5 or 6 guys that you don't want to miss grabbing on waiver wires before your opponents do. You won't want to miss this. Welcome, folks. This is Professor Locke's Dr. Derek Bennett here. And in this episode, we're talking major injuries that have happened already in week 1. It's always kind of interesting in week 1 because we don't know exactly what these teams are going to look like, what guys are going to mesh on new teams, what incoming guys are going to make big impacts, and we're starting to figure this all out in week 1 here. But I'm recording this as usual right before the Sunday night football game, so we don't even have all the data. We haven't even watched the last couple of games. We got a couple of amazing matchups with the Bills and Ravens coming up on Sunday night football, the Bears going up against the Vikings tomorrow night and Monday night. But again, we can't necessarily sit back and wait. We have to be prepared. We have to. And when it comes to fantasy football, there are major things that happen every single week where guys absolutely go off and makes a splash to make it really hard to keep those guys off our fantasy teams. But a lot of times we're also filling in holes that, guys come down with injuries and whatnot, and we got to fill some guys in. So in this episode, how this is going to work on week-to-week basis, we're going to be doing this every Sunday night. Usually it'll come out Monday morning, but every Sunday night I'm going to be going through the top 5 or 6 injuries that occur on the offensive side of the ball that could impact your fantasy lineups. Going into a little bit of depth, a lot of times this early, we don't have all of the data yet, right? A couple of these guys are probably going to get some imaging tomorrow, whether it's x-rays, MRIs, get a little bit better of an idea exactly how long these guys will be out. But as a doctor of physical therapy, based on some of the videos that I've seen, some of the mechanisms of injuries, how guys landed, those kind of things, I can give you a brief outlook to kind of get ahead of the game in most cases. Now, again, imaging is probably going to be necessary for a couple of these guys to tell us severity and exactly how long they will be out. But, there are some guys that are already making massive plays and doing amazing job making plays out there that are on waiver wire. So we're going to start off with the injury updates. And this episode, we'll be talking mostly wide receivers, a couple tight ends thrown in here as well. Not too many running backs went down with major injuries that I saw. I didn't see any quarterbacks really leave games this week. But last week, as far as waiver wires go, I threw out Daniel Jones, who had a big 3-touchdown game, 2 of which came on the ground. I threw out Dylan Sampson, who was really the lead back for Cleveland today against the Bengals, and Jonnu Smith found the end zone for my Pittsburgh Steelers. So already hitting some big guys and coming through that you could have had in your starting lineups if you would have listened last week. But let's talk some injuries. The big one that happened way back when on Friday night, Xavier Worthy running into Travis Kelce. I believe it was like the 3rd play of the game. He was expected to have an MRI. I didn't necessarily see any updates today, but it looks like he probably has some sort of shoulder dislocation, subluxation, some instability of his shoulder, which is always a little interesting to me because as a wide receiver, they don't have to throw too often. They don't throw too often. They do have to go up to make catches above the head. But when it comes to shoulder instability, this is something that just, long-term career focused really can play a big impact. So when it comes to Xavier Worthy, it kind of depends on how much instability there is, what the severity truly is. And that MRI will tell us a little bit to see if there's any ligaments or his labrum that were truly damaged. If none of those things were torn and truly stretched out to the point where there was potential, more moderate levels of instability, if those things took place, this is probably a season-ending injury at the end of the day. Hopefully, for Xavier Worthy's sake and fantasy owners' sake that have him on their teams, this is minor instability. He might be out for, I'll say, 3 to 6 weeks. But in the meantime, that Kansas City Chiefs offense is already knocked down by the suspension of Rashee Rice. So with Xavier Worthy also going down, that Kansas City offense is really missing a couple of big-time playmakers. A couple of guys that went down today with injuries. George Kittle left with a left hamstring injury, did score a touchdown before the injury, so it wasn't a complete bust for fantasy owners that had him in their lineup this week. But he did have a couple of hamstring injuries last season that sidelined him for a couple of games. So this is starting to become a reoccurring thing with George Kittle. One of the greatest predictors of future injury is previous injury. And with Kittle, this is starting to become a theme, which is not good. With hamstring injuries, they're really, really challenging to come back in season, but it all depends on severity. Sometimes these things keep us out for guys out for a week or two, sometimes closer to a month to 6 weeks. In George Kittle's case, it seems to be a little more on the minor side. He didn't necessarily, need help off the field. He just kind of came up limp as he was running a route. So I would expect George Kittle, and especially this early in the season, the 49ers are going to be pretty cautious with their star tight end. I would not be surprised if he misses at least 1, maybe 2 weeks. But this is a guy that, I would expect to be out this coming week against the Saints. Now, Brock Bowers, on the other hand, was an interesting one. He got hit in the right knee while he was running out of bounds. Had a little bit of what we call a valgus type of a mechanism, basically meaning his knee got pushed medially towards his other leg. He ran out of bounds. Looked like it gave out on the next route that he ran. Didn't necessarily need help off the field or anything. It's really hard to say right now exactly what's going on in Brock Bowers' knee. Now, after the game, in a couple of interviews, he said that he felt perfectly fine, that he'll be ready to go next week. On the other hand, he did ask to go back in the game, and the med staff kept him out. So whether it's, just the adrenaline that's going through him throughout the game, that knee hasn't started to stiffen up and swell up and things like that, with something major going on where the medical staff just didn't want to break him with that news at that point. They wanted to go ahead and get some imaging or something like that, or he's truly fine. This is one where we will definitely want to have the additional imaging, so stay tuned for Brock Bowers. Drake London, wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, fell directly onto his shoulder, landed awkwardly trying to catch a touchdown that was overturned, actually, which just sucks. Get injured, and the play was overturned when you thought you caught a touchdown. But yeah, he landed directly on his shoulder. Typically when that happens, especially with wide receivers or running backs, when we land awkwardly directly on the tip of our shoulder, that tells me that it's probably an AC sprain. With AC sprains, again, it kind of depends on the severity. There's all kinds of different grades of AC sprain, but your AC joint sits kind of right here where your collarbone comes over and attaches to your acromion, which is part of your shoulder blade. With AC sprains, if this is a grade 1 sprain, I'm expecting him to potentially be back next week, if not maybe miss a week. But Drake London has been known to play through a lot of injuries. He's a pretty tough guy, so I would expect, if this is truly a grade 1 sprain, for him to actually play next week. Now, it might limit him a little bit, but I think the Falcons really need him, especially since Darnell Mooney is out with a shoulder injury since training camp. Evan Ingram, another tight end for the Denver Broncos, left with a calf strain. Don't really know much about this one. I didn't get to see this one. I couldn't find any videos on it. Wouldn't be surprised if he misses a week or two, but it's really too early to say. Calf strains, hamstring strains, those kind of things just tend to linger a little bit. We all know that Christian McCaffrey's situation last year started with a calf strain, ended up with Achilles tendonitis. The Denver Broncos really rolled over the Titans late in that game. So I would expect them to be a little cautious with the joker of Evan Ingram. And he probably will miss a week or two. And then finally, Juwan Jennings, another wide receiver, going down with a shoulder injury. Again, I missed this one. I couldn't find a video of this one, but Kyle Shanahan did say that he will have an MRI tomorrow. And all of a sudden, that 49ers offense is looking very, very different. Obviously, they don't have Brandon Ayuk until probably week 6, week 8, something like that, due to the ACL tear last year. We already talked about George Kittle leaving with that hamstring strain, and now Juwan Jennings is needing an MRI on his shoulder. So, that 49ers offense and Brock Purdy all of a sudden is going to have to lean on Christian McCaffrey, who was dealing with a calf strain just this past week and missed some time at practice. So with Juwan Jennings' shoulder, again, need a little bit more information on that one. Hopefully we'll get that MRI tomorrow, and we'll know a little bit more about what's going on with the 49ers wide receiver. Okay. So those are the major injuries that I saw come up this in the first couple of windows. Let's start talking about waiver wires. And there's some guys out there that are available in at least 50% of leagues that I think either have a great matchup next week or just played really, really well, got all kinds of targets this past week. And I think they're guys that you're going to want to add or at least stash on your lineups for going forth. So let's start off with a guy down in Jacksonville in Sunshine, Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence threw for 178 yards today, did throw for 1 touchdown and an interception, but he goes up against a Cincinnati Bengals team that still has a lot to be desired on the defensive side of the ball. I think overall this is a matchup pickup for Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is still pretty inconsistent in my opinion as a quarterback. He was 19 of 31, did throw an interception today. But the Bengals defensive secondary gave up, I think it was 290 yards to good old Joe Flacco and that Browns offense. Trevor Lawrence did find Travis Hunter quite a few times today. Didn't end up going to Brian Thomas Jr. nearly as often as I expected him to. But I think that's going to change in week 2 against the Cincinnati Bengals. That Jags offense looked pretty good in week 1, despite Trevor Lawrence being a little bit inconsistent and throwing a pick. But I think he's got a great matchup in week 2 against the Bengals. Going forward here, let's switch over to a running back, and I'm going back to the well. Let's talk a little bit more about Dylan Sampson. I mean, the guy was the leading back today for the Brownies against those Bengals. And, I mean, yes, Quentin Johnston was signed. We'll see if he gets a few touches next week. I don't expect him to be full go for the next couple of weeks, which really opens up a chance for Dylan Sampson to continue to show the versatility of a pretty good rookie running back. He had 12 carries for only 29 yards, but he really, really shined in the receiving game. He had 8 catches for 64 yards. And going up against the Baltimore Ravens next week, I really see Joe Flacco needing to dump the ball off quite a bit to Dylan Sampson. The Baltimore Ravens have one of the better defenses in the league, and they probably have one of the best secondaries, in my opinion, if not the best secondary going into week 2. So I don't expect Jerry Jeudy and Njoku and Fannin and those guys to really have the opportunity to get open a whole lot against Baltimore, which opens up the running back to have reception. So especially if you're in a PPR league, Dylan Sampson is a running back that is and potentially could be the Browns' third down receiving back all season. So in terms of running backs, again, we didn't really have any running backs go down in week 1, which is great. But it didn't really show me much in terms of other running backs that you could potentially pick up off of waivers. Everybody kind of played about how we expected them to in week 1. One guy that I'm going to mention real briefly, I would caution picking him up, but if Jaylen Warren goes down with an injury, Kenny Gainwell was the RB2 today for the Pittsburgh Steelers. All of their running backs kind of struggled, but a lot of us really thought that Caleb Johnson, the rookie out of Iowa, would be running back 2 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That wasn't the case today. Kenny Gainwell got the second most carries for the team, played in a lot more snaps than Caleb Johnson did. So Kenny Gainwell might be a guy that you look to add if you're in a deeper league in case Jaylen Warren would happen to go down. But let's switch over to the wide receiver position. And this is partially due to injuries and suspension, but Hollywood Brown for the Kansas City Chiefs. He is available in 50% of leagues. If he is available in your 50%, good on you. You might want to pick this guy up, especially not knowing the status of Xavier Worthy and his shoulder injury. And we know that Rashee Rice is going to be down for at least the next 5 weeks. He's suspended for the first 6. So Hollywood Brown against the Chargers on Friday night had 10 catches for 99 yards, but he had 16 targets. 16. In terms of wide receivers, like that room has been decimated already. And they do have other options. They have Juju Smith-Schuster and a couple of other guys, but Hollywood Brown is by far the guy that Patrick Mahomes looked towards the most, and I expect that to continue now that Hollywood Brown is fully healthy. So they go up against the Philadelphia Phillies in Kansas City this coming week, I believe at that 4:30 mid-afternoon spot. The Eagles, Philadelphia Eagles. The Cowboys lit them up before the lightning delay. I mean, Dak and his wide receivers were really throwing it around the yard, moving the ball up and down the field. Cornerback 2 for the Eagles really seems to be a problem. Adoree Jackson just doesn't seem to fill in that role like Darius Slay did a year ago. So Hollywood Brown against that Eagles secondary is a great matchup, partially just due to the amount of targets that he's expected to see. Another guy that I thought had a really, really good first game, and they actually played each other this past week, was Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston in the past has been a guy that you couldn't necessarily count on because he would drop the ball about every other time that he was thrown it. Well, this past week he had 2 touchdowns, 5 catches for 79 yards on 7 targets. Justin Herbert trusts this guy all of a sudden. I don't know what happened this offseason through training camp, but Quentin Johnston has taken a little bit of a step forward. He was really their primary wide receiver, one of their primary wide receivers this past week. Keenan Allen definitely had a few targets. Ladd McConkey is still going to be there. But Quentin Johnston is kind of that big play threat for the Los Angeles Chargers. And he goes up against the Raiders. They gave up 287 yards passing to Drake May in the New England Patriots this past week. So I do expect Quentin Johnston to continue this upcoming week due to kind of a bad secondary up there in New England, as long as Christian Gonzalez isn't going to be on the field. Let's switch over to the tight end position, and let's talk a little bit about Juwan Johnson. Yeah, Juwan Johnson was one of Spencer Rattler's primary targets this past week. And going up against the 49ers next week, I think he's going to have to be again. He had 8 catches for 76 yards today on 11 targets. And, the Saints no longer have Taysom Hill, the Swiss Army knife that he is, as an option. Taysom Hill went down with that ACL tear late in the season last year. I don't expect him to be back until at least week 10, week 12, if not at all this upcoming season. And Juwan Johnson is a big target, especially in the red zone, to hopefully bring in some touchdowns. He wasn't able to find the end zone today, but I don't necessarily know if that 49ers team is the same. If they do end up putting up some points, Juwan Johnson could definitely pick up some garbage time catches and yardage as well. But Juwan Johnson in the tight end room would be a nice add, especially with Spencer Rattler as your quarterback. Young quarterbacks like to find easy completions, and who better to do that than your trusty tight end? Now, finally, this week I have a little bit of a wild card to finish up. Usually, I don't necessarily bring these players up, I guess, but can we talk a little bit about that Green Bay defense? Man, they look good today against the Detroit Lions. If Green Bay is available as a defense in your leagues, and I believe they are in about 70% of leagues out there, you might want to pick them up moving forward. That Green Bay defense really, really shined today against the Detroit Lions team that had one of the best offenses in the league last year, and they have basically everybody back except for Frank Ragnow and, of course, Ben Johnson, their OC that's now the head coach in Chicago. But that Green Bay defense looked nasty. Micah Parsons only played probably, a quarter of the snaps, if that. Once they get him back into football shape, he learns the scheme. That Green Bay defense is going to be nasty. It's one of the younger units on or across the league, but they have talent everywhere. They have a ton of first-round picks on that defense. And they had 4 sacks today, 1 pick, and they shut the Lions out basically to 6 points until a garbage time touchdown late. So giving up 13 points to a Lions team that I expected to be pretty good still was pretty impressive by that Green Bay defense. So that's really it in terms of the waiver wire targets for this week. So just as a quick recap, from a quarterback standpoint, I really like Trevor Lawrence this coming week against the Cincinnati Bengals. Running back wise, Dylan Sampson. I mean, he's available in like 65% of leagues out there. He was the lead back for the Cleveland Browns, and part of that's due to his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. So I wouldn't be too surprised if he is kind of their third down back, their receiving threat all season long coming out of the backfield. On the wide receiver front, Hollywood Brown for the Kansas City Chiefs and Quentin Johnston for the LA Chargers are 2 good options for a couple different reasons. Hollywood Brown out of necessity at the wide receiver room. I think Quentin Johnston is that big play threat for the LA Chargers. And then finally, at the tight end position, Juwan Johnson for the New Orleans Saints goes up against the 49ers, and he did have a bunch of targets today. He's a big target, and I expect him to find the end zone sooner rather than later. Finally, that Green Bay defense was absolutely nasty today against the Lions, and they go up against a Washington defense with a young quarterback by the name of Jaden Daniels next week. Maybe not the best matchup for Green Bay, but I think that's a stash 'em pick up the way that they played against the Lions today. So moving forward here, this is what to expect every Monday morning. We're talking offensive injuries. We're talking waiver wire targets. We got to stay ahead of our opponents when it comes to fantasy football. If we're not going to pick guys up, somebody else is in the league, and we don't necessarily need these guys to be helping our opponents out. So, as always, if you liked what you saw here today, please like, subscribe, follow. Tell me who you are picking up this coming week out of waiver wires. And, here at Daily Fantasy Statement Games, we're throwing out content all the time regarding, obviously, these offensive waiver wires. We got a bunch of IDP related information content being thrown out by my good buddy Sebastian, the DGen Doc, Axton, all the guys over at IDP Plus. So from Professor Locks here at Daily Fantasy Statement Games at IDP Plus. See you later.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.